What's good, fellas? Welcome to Mint Map Spaces today. I'm a couple minutes late today. I'm sorry for that. I was kind of stuck in the traffic, and I'm here now. I hope you guys are with me. Jason, you here too? Tell me you can hear me, man.
Yeah, I got you, man.
Perfect, man. Yeah, glad to be back. Last week we unfortunately had to skip because I was out of country. Today we are back again with the Mint Map Spaces, taking a look at the markets, checking what's going on in the NFT world, everything that's going on with the Goodfellas, upcoming mint dates will be revealed. And yeah, this is the plan for today. Jason, how's everything on your side of the world?
Things are good, man. Been super busy as well. So actually, the fact that you were gone over the holidays actually worked out okay. So yeah, it's all good. We'll get her rolling again. This week has been pretty busy overall. I think a lot of people have been out of town, at least over here. It seems to be like vacation week for everybody for some reason. I guess Fourth of July week was seemed to be like a lot bigger this year than in previous years. So not sure what's going on with that, but yeah, everything's all good, man. And yeah, glad to be back. Glad to have you back. How was your trip?
The trip was actually pretty cool. It was good having some days off, spending with my mom and my girlfriend. Actually, it was cool. We've talked a little bit about that on the podcast as well. So if you guys want to go and listen, not right now, but after the space, of course. Um, Yeah, I've actually checked the markets today, and I feel like in the podcast we said that it was somehow some kind of, dead week. Like last week, not much was happening in terms of price action. Tendency was like going lower. We talked a lot about the Bitcoin sales from Germany, the Mount Gox, right? Um, yeah, so if you want to go and listen to that, you can listen to the podcast. I'm not sure if there was actually like if Germany sold even more this week, but I think they do not have a lot of bitcoins remaining, right?
They sold, I think, more than half of their holdings based on what I saw. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar, we obviously had a big pullback over the last week. Being a holiday week, I think lots of people on vacation. But in addition to that, Germany started selling their confiscated Bitcoin, and Mt. Gox started their refund process with something like 140,000 Bitcoin or something like this. And this drove the market together with Germany and together with traders being on vacation, everybody out of town for some reason, all at the same time. This drove Bitcoin all the way down to 52, I think, or 53. So we had a tremendous buying opportunity in Bitcoin and Sol and Ethereum. If you're following Ethereum, all the major tokens gave a pretty fantastic buying opportunity. So if you had some powder dry, it was a great time to jump in the market and pick up some tokens. You're already up, 10 or 12 or 14%, depending on when you bought. So yeah, it was a nice little gift from my perspective. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I get that, man. I feel like these days the markets are pretty like unpredictable. I feel like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin going to the 40s. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes back to the 60s again. I feel like it's pretty unpredictable in the short term. Where do you see it going now? Like, what shall I do? Like, long, short, leverage? What shall I do now?
Well, the story hasn't changed. I mean, if you're at all interested in making money, you have to be in technology. I mean, there's no other way around it. You have to be in technology. And this is simply because the traditional markets aren't moving, and the ones that are moving aren't moving very much. And the truth is, like with most of the major markets, automated trading basically skims off the profits, and the markets move. Like it was interesting. Raoul Pal, those of you guys who follow him, and is basically he's basically an investor. He runs a fund of funds. He does content at Real Vision, And one of his posts this past week was pretty funny. He posted, I think it was the the Dow Jones, I think, moved like 0.07%. And he made some snarky tweet about how, like the traditional markets are on fire because they removed 0.07%, right? Like if that doesn't happen every minute in crypto, people get disappointed, right? But so as traditional markets is like news that the market was up 0.07%. So, like the point is volatility is your friend if you want to make money. And when you have these big pullbacks, you want to have a few dollars that you can, throw into the market because technology is only being more and more adopted. So my short-term thesis is I don't give a fuck about the short term, and my long-term thesis is that technology coupled with AI, blockchain, and crypto, computers are going to want to communicate and transact and operate in the digital world, and in the crypto world, they'll want to transact value. I don't see any reason to be invested in old school companies or old school markets when you've got technologies like blockchain, AI, NFT tokenization, real world asset tokenization coming on board. It just doesn't make any sense. And so I think the smart money is going to be in the NASDAQ if you're going traditional, and it's going to be in crypto if you're, really want to get aggressive and make some money. I mean, I think I'm not advising anyone do this, but I know Raoul Pal put 90% of his personal wealth in Solana alone. So that right there tells you the conviction of someone, sitting on millions of dollars to invest. And I tend to agree with that. So my investment thesis is don't worry about the short term, build for the long term, because the only way to win is to get in front of the big moves. And if you're waiting for news to trade, or like if you're trading meme coins and you're not a professional trader, you're not going to win. The only thing you can trade is, the news. And when you're trading the news, you're trading this information. The moves have already been made. I mean, the news is reporting what has happened. People are telling you what has happened, not what's going to happen. And so the best thing to do is to get into a long-term position where you can start accumulating and then just watch it fan out over time. So we are currently in the sideways, sort of way of thinking right now. Where if you want to look at the cycles, the 4-year cycle, the traditional cycle, if it holds, we're in the sideways movement right now. And I don't see, I don't think Bitcoin pulls back to the 40s. Um, Obviously everything follows Bitcoin. If that happened, it'd be a tremendous buying opportunity. But if it did, I would definitely be throwing some money in. But I think, you're probably going to have a few opportunities in the 50s, and then it's going to start creeping up. And then late fall, early winter is really where you want to start to see like the big banana zone type thing happening where you have this massive run up. It should start toward the end of summer, end of fall and winter, and then it'll carry into next year, early next year. So that's what I'm looking at, and that's what I'm holding for. And at that point, once we hit the banana zone, I might take a little bit off the top and let everything come back down and then reinvest like I've been doing with Solana. But yeah, I think so far everything is holding true to the way it normally plays out. So I don't really see any cause for alarm. And as long as the story for crypto continues to strengthen, NFTs, blockchain, these things are going to have a purpose and a use in the future. And you want to be, you want to be in that, you want to be in those markets and you want to be ahead of those trends. So that's my macro thesis, and that's what I'm investing for. How about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I actually agree with everything you said. The only thing that I'm surprised of is maybe you have the same impression, but I feel like lately the market is reacting less to bullish news. Because if I check the news right now, for example, like what happened this week, just on Watcher Guru, for example, you have like the SEC saying that most of the cryptocurrencies are non-securities. We have like the inflation that went down lower than expected. JP Morgan says crypto markets will rebound in August. Okay, doesn't really matter. Um, and yeah, I feel like we have so many good news on crypto, but markets are not reacting the way they did like in the past. Is it just my feeling, or do you have the same feeling?
This is normal. I mean, the more like a the more a population hears a thing, the less excited by it they get, right? So this kind of goes back to the early days of NFTs where, you could just throw up any project and everybody would buy it. Well, I mean, the days of that have passed, right? The days of getting excited about every little bit of news have passed. And the truth is, NFTs, Web3, blockchain, um, these newer investment vehicles, they have not done a good job of onboarding new blood. It's basically the same people going from project to project to project to project, just skipping around, most of them losing money in the process. And when you do that long enough, I mean, you start to get just fatigued on the whole thing. And so we talk about the psychology of the thing, and that's part of the psychology that's playing out. So the biggest reason that people lose when they invest is because they can't control their mindset, you know? So like when I think on the podcast we talked about the feeding frenzies. Feeding frenzies work in two directions. So if you have like a pullback, like in this particular case, we had this pullback over last week with Bitcoin and the major coins like Solana and ETH. They're great buying opportunities, right? But that's when people got fearful, and that's when other people sold because other people sold because other people sold. The frenzy, the feeding frenzy works in reverse, right? And then when, of course, it started to turn around, the feeding frenzy worked in the positive direction. It went all the way up. It went down. I think Bitcoin uh, bottomed around like 52, 53, and then it peaked around 58. So that in and of itself was like a 12, 14% gain if you bought the bottom and sold the top. So there were lots of traders who did that. And all they did was just watch the psychology of the people who were feeding into the selling until it capitulated, bought at the bottom, the volume slowed down at the bottom, and then they watched it rise. And when the volume slowed down at the top, they started to sell, which triggered other people to sell. And so now Bitcoin sits at whatever it is, like 58, 57, whatever it is today. But it's just trending up and down. And you'll see this because so many people have access to the markets and the ability to trade. If they didn't have that, like if the market's closed at 5 p.m. or 7 p.m., whatever it is traditionally, you wouldn't see these clean cycles. You wouldn't see them. They would be coinciding with the clock. The only thing that I see that's different in the crypto market nowadays is um, less excitement around any news. And that's just because, again, like I said, the same people are here. We haven't done a good job of onboarding the average person. The average person still doesn't own crypto, doesn't know anything about it, thinks it's a scam. And we've brought in Wall Street. And so Wall Street is now in the game. And again, we've got all of these ETFs now holding digital assets. And so, it's like the saying goes in the traditional markets, you sell in May and go away, right? So like June, July, and August are vacation months for these guys, and some of them actually take off 2 or 3 months, and just go sit at their beach house and maybe work by phone or something. There's not a lot of major moves happening in the summertime. And when Wall Street can pick up, more than 1% of a $1 trillion asset, they can move it, or they can not move it, or they can sit on it, right? So until the average person gets involved, you're not going to see any more major moves because a lot of this liquidity is soaking up these assets that traditionally would have been moved by the little guy. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I think, as the markets mature, it's just going to be like traditional markets. Everything starts to smooth out a little bit more. And so you have less of that volatility. And of course, until we can onboard new people and new people can start to see, oh shit, I can make 10% this week, not 0.07% this month or whatever, Raoul Pal was making fun of. Like when they see that, that's when new excitement and sort of fresh eyes sees this thing and they start to get a little bit more excited about it. So, I mean, that's really what I see. I don't really think any human being can be exposed to the same information over and over again and continue to get excited about it because it just resets your expectation level. Like I think Dan Bilzerian talks about this a lot, right? Like whether it's money or girls or cars or houses or vacations, like once you hit a certain mark and you've experienced it, the excitement is gone. So if you've been in the crypto market long enough and you've hit a double or a triple or a quintuple or a 10x on an asset, it's like, okay, well, I've done that. I've experienced that. And yeah, it feels good. But the second time you experience it, it's not as much of a high because you've already experienced it. And the same thing's happening here. So I think once new blood is onboarded, and again, part of our responsibility with Goodfellas is to get, like a big education push into the marketplace attached to our website, which we've talked about in the past, and it's on the agenda. When we start bringing new blood in and other projects start bringing new blood in, that's when you start to see the excitement start to rise because everything will start to sort of bubble again. But that's not going to happen until we get new blood. So that's what I see. I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, what I see right now is pretty much what you explained. But it's interesting because I remember like a couple months ago when the USA was actually like publishing some inflation data, for example, or when we had all these ETF news coming out. I remember like people eagerly waiting for the news to come out, and once they were released, you could see a spike in the Bitcoin chart. And as you mentioned, like with that moving forward, and with all these news coming out day after day after day, people get less excited, and I feel like that's a good thing. Um, but yeah, what can we do about it? I mean, in the end, it's all about the long term, as you mentioned in the beginning. And I feel like if you invest in crypto now, it's still a very, very good opportunity. We expect it to rise pretty hard, like at the end of the year, starting and until mid next year. And yeah, let's see where we go from there. But another thing I wanted to talk about with you is actually a more general topic that I've been observing in the last couple of weeks. Um, what do you think about, like, it's not just like cryptocurrency related, but also like NFT related. What do you think about partnerships? Because I feel like even today NFTs and the cryptocurrencies often promoted partnerships and and enthusiastically announced them on social media. And it seems to me that partnerships, for example, also are increasingly losing their influence as as it often it's like unclear how they're supposed to support the respective communities, and how they will benefit from it. When I go to social media, no matter if it's an NFT project or if it's some kind of crypto meme coin, I often see postings like, "Hey, we proudly announced to partner with company X," or "We are happy to be able to partner with them or these guys or whatever." And I feel like it often appears that the announcement of the partnership itself is meant to be the utility, simply to create the illusion that a lot is happening behind the scenes of the project. And I remember like last year, for example, you had a lot of NFT projects as well, announcements like, "Hey, we are partnering up with big guys." I mean, we've seen, for example, let's take Toys R Us, for example. They had that big collection. I even forgot the name, but they had a collection coming up. There was a big hype around it, and I think the project went to zero. So, what do you think? How important are these kind of partnerships? Like, because in my honest opinion, I feel like once you have a partnership, you have to make clear how that partnership is going to benefit your community, how it's going to help, how your project is being improved by that, and like not just saying, "Hey, we partnered up with them to let people think like, hey, we are growing." You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, listen, like just take Soul Rockers for example, right? So we bought out Soul Rockers a few months ago, right? And when I was talking to the founder, Brian, who basically, this guy's a professional drummer. He drums for um, Everclear, and before that, he was a drummer for American Hi-Fi, right? And like his whole heart was around, making sure that the community got a good product, and obviously he wanted to make money doing it. But the thing is, at the end of the day, when he and I were speaking about why he wanted to step back, like his reasoning for stepping back was he literally said to me, "I just can't open Discord one more time." Right? Like I just cannot do it, right? Because the expectation of the people there is constantly Give me, give me, give me, do something for me, do something for me, do something for me. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, this is a guy with a wife and a kid. You know, he's traveling the world playing drums with Everclear and American Hi-Fi, right? Like he's given every free moment of his time to create, and it just goes unappreciated 9 times out of 10, right? And so when it comes to partnership announcements, when it comes to artwork announcements, mint announcements, like in a lot of cases, these are just there to assuage any guilt the founder might feel for not putting something out that particular week, right? And when you have a population and you have a group of founders who feel like if they don't stay on the edge of the bubble and constantly, throw something new, throw something new, throw something new, it just continually tears you down to the point where you don't even want to participate. And so the conversation that Brian and I had with Soul Rockers was literally, I cannot open Discord anymore. I cannot look at it. I don't want to see it. It's just a weight around my neck. Right. It was literally his words. So I think that, yeah, a lot of this stuff is just about making it look like you're doing something because the expectation of the marketplace is I want it all yesterday on my blockchain in my NFT project, and fuck you if you don't deliver. I mean, that's just literally, it's literally like the mentality that was created with so many NFT projects going out. Now, I'm not saying that's our population, and I'm not saying that that's you or I. I'm just saying that this has been the case that I've experienced in speaking to other people in the marketplace. And when you have that, I mean, there's this tremendous pressure on you, and you want to deliver, and you want to be a good person, and you want to satisfy everyone. But at the same time, you have a life to live, and you have a real job, and you have other things going on. There's no wonder why so many people walk away, or so many people just throw up random announcements or random partnerships that really make no sense with the collection that they have or what they want to create. So, from that standpoint, I agree. I think a lot of it is just attention seeking, and and sort of an assuagement of that guilt that you might feel as a founder who didn't put something out that week or what have you. But on some level, as a founder, you have to own the expectation that you've created, right? And a lot of these projects were sold based on we're going to do this, this, and this tomorrow. you know, it's all going to happen. Everybody's going to get rich, and you know, the world is going to be your oyster, kind of a thing. And so, when that's the expectation that the founders create, then you know what? Hey, you get what you got because you know what you're responsible for your language and for your words. And so, that's one of the things that I feel like we've done a decent job at. Obviously we have a lot to learn, but setting expectations properly, following through on proper dates, and making sure that things happen when they happen. We're not 100%, but we're pretty close. And I feel like because of that, we've drawn in a more mature group of people. So yeah, I mean, a lot of these partnerships don't make sense. They're never going to make sense as long as that guilt is there, and as long as it's sort of there just to kind of throw something up. But you got to give these guys credit for staying in the fight on some level. And maybe they have plans that behind the scenes that they haven't made public. Who knows? But the partnership doesn't guarantee anything other than more work. So, like, um, what doesn't matter who the partner is, at the end of the day, if you're not delivering value or delivering some form of receivable or some form of proposition that's going to be consumed by people and received in a positive way, it doesn't matter. So I think choosing partnerships is one of those things that you have to be very, very careful about. And this is a lesson that you and I are learning in the artist incubator world. Like when we work with an artist, that's a partnership. It's a dual responsibility. It's a deliverable situation. It's a follow-up situation. It's a tech situation. It's a creation situation. All of those things have to fall in line. And if you pick the wrong person, then hey, it's no fun. So yeah, I think you're right. It's on one level, it is about just making sure that you look like you're doing something, and then on another level, I think it comes from a genuine desire from people who care, to want to deliver to people because I think most people really want to do well, you know, and there's an element of that underneath it. So I think it's, depending on the motivation, it's good, and depending on how it impacts the community and the founder, it could be a negative situation. But as long as it's coming from a good place and it can benefit people, that's what you're really looking for, in my humble opinion. What do you see?
Yeah, exactly the same. Because like when I checked that, I went on X and I just like searched for like NFT partnerships, and I stumbled up on a few posts. For example, I have one here. Breaking Claynosaurus and Elixir NFT have joined forces for an ongoing partnership, starting with corruption battles. Get ready for a big one of one oval reward and snapshots. Blah blah blah. And then we have what else? Ovals NFT have a couple of partnerships. So what we just want to say is that partnerships most of the times do not really make sense. Every now and then we get DMs from NFT projects who want to partner up, but we usually reject. Projects still go to zero. It doesn't make sense to do that. And I've never seen anyone coming to a Discord, of any kind of project, getting in and asking like, hey, why did we go to zero? We had tons of partnerships. It's just a joke. So yeah, just as I mentioned, if you guys wonder why we haven't any kind of partnerships yet, it's because we are pretty selective about that, and we want to make sure if we ever partner with anyone, it needs to benefit the community and make it better in some way, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, we do have quite a few partners. It's just, we've set some specific ground rules. Like every artist that we work with is a partner. Every project that we take on becomes a partner. Um, it's just that we haven't partnered with some random, like plush doll creation thing, or, toy creator or what have you. But, that might be in the future. It might be in the cards. I mean, right now I'm looking at, here in Phoenix, we have a pretty big hotbed around art and creation. I know that we've mentioned in the past, like Todd McFarlane has started releasing some of his artwork on Polygon, and in his partnerships with DC and the figure creation with DC, and his comic books. He was a creator of Spawn and all that. Like a lot of that stuff happens here in Phoenix, and there's a fairly large artwork community here, and none of these people are connected to blockchain or NFTs. Like none of them. So the last time I was at the comic shop, I was talking to the owner, and I was like, "Listen, man, you know that guy, Jason? This other guy, Jason, that I met there. He's an artist whose best friend is a comic book writer. I'm like, hey man, how do I get in touch with this guy? I haven't seen him in here in a while." And he's like, "Oh yeah, he doesn't work anymore, but you can reach out and see if you can contact him, right?" So, I mean, I'm looking for, like a reason or a way to get in contact with this guy that I met once and plug into the artwork community, just to touch on the idea of potentially doing like a comic and doing some different artwork. And obviously, looking for artists who are interested in doing the facial artwork that we talked about doing. And I mean, once you plug into the community, you plug into all of them, right? So then it's like, okay, well, who do we partner with, or do we want to partner with them? And if so, like, how would this benefit the people that we're working with, right? So, like, I've seen a lot of projects do like one-off comic books, you know, but I'm like, why would you do a one-off comic book? That doesn't make any sense. It's just like, okay, well, um, this is kind of a cool, thing that I can do. But I mean, a comic is like it's, you can't tell a whole story in one comic, right? So, like if we did do a comic partnership, I would want to basically have a artist and writer who was committed to like telling a full length story. You know what I mean? So like I'm not just getting some random one-off comic book with, like a like half-baked, ridiculous story in it. But like, okay, what's the origin story for the character? Why is the character motivated to do what he's doing or what she's doing? Where does it go? What are the challenges? Like, what's the full story arc, right? So if once I get in touch with Jason and I talk to his buddy, I think his name is Jared, and I plug into that community, that's like an idea that I would pitch to them. Like, hey, we have this really cool IP. I have this idea for a story around these faceless guys who go around doing this type of thing, right? Like, I don't want to reveal the idea, but if they vibe on that idea, then that partnership would benefit us all, in that we would create a series of books that would be sellable, not as not one book that we would just ship to holders just for the sake of shipping something to holders. And so I think of it that way, like what would be the long-term play? And the long-term play would be, okay, well, is this story good enough to maybe become a screenplay? Is that screenplay good enough to maybe become a show or a movie, right? And from that perspective, it makes sense to partner with like an artist and a writer. But it doesn't make sense for me just to kind of do it for the sake of doing it, which I think is what you were talking about earlier. We already know it's possible. The question is, can we execute it to a very high level and actually use the IP in a way that could be attractive to other media, that could be monetized by other media, right? And if these guys have connections to larger production houses, then you want to make sure that what you do is top shelf and you share that with those larger production houses because that's how you get in the game, right? So, I mean, from a partnership standpoint or from a doing something standpoint, you know, it's kind of funny. I think it was Pen Friends Discord where they have a channel that's called Devs Doing Something, you know, because like everybody pops into Discord and they're like, well, what are you guys doing? You know, it's been 2 weeks since you since you released something or whatever, right? And so they just created a channel called Devs Doing Something, and you know, they like pop in there and like, you know, throw a couple words about, hey, this is what we're working on, kind of a thing, right? And you know, I think the more we get away from that, the more we get into, you know, like long-term vision stuff, that's when more average people come in and people start to really adopt the technology. So I mean, we're really at the beginning. We've talked about this before. Like we're so early in the infancy of this whole adoption process, this whole adoption S curve. I mean, everybody here will do well as long as they don't get shaken out of the market. And this is one of the things Ralph Howe talks about, you know, like your only job right now is not to get shaken out of the market. And this is why I'm constantly railing against meme coins and bullshit projects and all this dumb stuff because, you know, people will come in and they will lose their money and then they'll say, oh, well, crypto's a scam. Well, no, crypto's not a scam. Like what you bought into might have been a scam. You know, you do your own research stuff on the anonymous people that you can possibly know anything about. You know, that might have been a scam. But when you have real players doing real things who want to actually provide value to you, then no, there's no scam there. It's just you may have come in at the wrong time, or you might have made a wrong decision, or the management team might have made a wrong decision. But you can't blame crypto for bad decisions, right? People are people and they're going to fuck up and they're going to make bad decisions. So I just challenge people to do quality research, quality work, like think long term. And you know, again, like it's nothing against meme coins, it's nothing against like flipping, you know, flipper NFT projects. Who cares? Like if you can make money doing that, go for it, right? As long as you're not hurting people, go for it. But at the end of the day, like I'm always thinking in terms of win-win. So is it win-win for me to dump on somebody else? Mm, probably not, you know, so I'm just going to stay out of that. But you know, am I a trader? Is my job like professional trading? Then you know, I could probably make money in meme coins. You know, am I friends with like a dev team that's gonna like hire a bunch of influencers and dump a bunch of shit on the marketplace and you know collect some money from a token or from a project? Can I make money on that? Probably. You just have to decide: is it within your you know like within your moral character to want to dump on people? Like, is it long term? Is it short term? Are you dumping or are you investing? Two different things, right? So I just feel like the more we can do good things and bring good things to life, whether it's a partnership or whether it's just the right value system, you know, that's how we create adoption and that's how these things get driven up. But right now, what's happening is consolidation, and this is a good thing for us, right? So, like, we acquired Soul Rockers, we acquired DAG, which I'll release in the near future. I'm not too far off from releasing that. And every one of these projects that fails is an opportunity for us to pick up fresh artwork that we can then license and own and then give the benefits back to our holders. And so you and I have talked about this a lot. You know, I made a post this past week about BlackRock talking about tokenizing real world assets. I mean, all this stuff is in the pipeline. It's all coming. It's just not going to come tomorrow on your time frame, on your blockchain, on your NFT project immediately all at once. It's going to take time to play out, right? So again, like your only job is not to get shaken out of the market. And your other job is just to decide where people actually care about you and want to provide real value, and they're actually doing something moral and ethical. And if you can do those things, I mean, as early as we are, you're not going to be, you're not going to be hurting for money. You're going to do quite well. And so that's how I see it. I don't know, maybe you can point out the flaws in my logic. I'm happy to admit where I'm wrong, but yeah, throw some opinion out there and let me know what you think.
It's actually pretty logic. The logic is good. But what I would like to jump in is like the idea that you just mentioned with the Goodfellas comic. I know we've never talked about that, but I actually really love that idea. But I feel like, we both would probably be very picky about the storyline, I guess. But would you say that it's necessary to create faces for the Goodfellas, like to create and develop a comic book, or would you say it's even possible with the ones we have?
Yeah, no, I don't think so at all. We've talked a little bit about the face art, and I mean, this is kind of a little bit of alpha. I guess we can drop here. Like the face art is cool and it is interesting and it's very different. And I think one of the things that makes the project, or really like drew me to the project originally, was the fact that when I saw those pieces, there was nothing on chain like it. There's still nothing on chain like it. And to me, it's just the coolest, most unique art going. Like it's just the coolest shit, right? And the way that I think of it in terms of story is, I'm a massive comic collector. Like I'm literally sitting in my office surrounded by thousands and thousands and thousands of comics. I think I have like, I don't know, probably like 17,000, 18,000 comics at this point. So a huge chunk of my disposable income has gone into comic collecting. I've read a lot of stories. I've read a lot of myth, I guess you would say, modern myth. And the truth is, there are very few comics that are worth a shit, like that are very good. And I'd be of the same mind. Like if we sit down and we decide we want to create a story or a screenplay or something along those lines, everything would need a purpose, including the faceless character. So I see, you know, storylines that involve faceless characters evolving to characters with faces by doing certain things. And I'm not sure what those certain things would be, but there's ways that you can weave development and character formation into the story that would allow them to evolve and change. And if you think about human development, like this is really why we're here. Like we're all born sort of blank slate-ish, not 100% blank slates, but blank slate-ish. And then we pick up the programs and we pick up the belief systems of the people who raise us. And then we go into young adulthood and it's our job to shed those and start becoming our own person. And so in a way, we're all evolving and our faces are changing, our bodies are changing, everything about us, our energy is changing as we go through life. And usually it's some sort of, traumatic event that speeds up that change. So there's lots of different ways you could take the story with the evolution of a character, going from a faceless character to a faced character. But one of the things that I'm going to do in one of the future launches is I'm going to revamp the face art to show facial contours. So like right now we have the face art and it's more or less flat. Like there's a little bit of shading so that you can see that it's a three-dimensional item, that the forefront of the face is brightly lit and the edges of the faces have shadows, but there's really no outline or shadows for eyes, nose, or mouth. So I think the first evolution of like the artwork specifically is to create facial like shadowing on the flatter art to sort of improve it that way, or not necessarily improve it, but to evolve it. And then from there you go into a fully faced character. And so who knows, maybe that makes its way into the comic book, but it's definitely going to make its way into like the second era of our artwork. So we talked about eras every 1,000 pieces. So, we're not far off from the first era being over. So second era art would definitely have some sort of like shadowing around that face. And how we do that and what that looks like remains to be seen. But, obviously there's a lot of work to do there. But I think that will give more of a persona, a more of a humanity to the characters. So, and two, it'll also give us the evolution of a character as just like if, like if I pick up, I don't know, pick a comic like There's a billion titles behind me. Like if I pick up like an X-Men comic from today, the characters and the way that they look and the way that they interact is very different from the way that they looked in the 60s when they were first developed. Right? They don't look anything like those characters, completely different. And same thing with the DC characters, the same thing with a lot of like Todd McFarlane stuff, like the Spawn stuff. And that's just natural and normal. You know, some artists are going to draw the pieces differently or the characters differently, and some artists are going to really capture the essence of what that particular character is about, and then other artists won't. And so, again, like what's a good partnership? A good partnership in this particular idea would be one who could capture the essence that we want to create around, you know, this particular character has a certain feel. It needs to be edgy, it needs to be different. And, it's not cartoony, it's more realistic. So capturing all those elements is not easy. And these would be things that, I would look for in a partnership. So like the alpha on that really would just be going from 100% flat art on the faces in the NFT project itself to like facialized like patterns that actually show like shading where the eyes would be or shading where the nose and mouth would be so that you have more of a human element to it. So, we'll see how that plays out, but that's one of the ideas that, we've been kicking around for the Eras piece.
Sounds great, man. But what I would like to know, as you're our tech guy as well, is there a possibility to tokenize like a whole comic?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's actually already happening now. So, for example, if you go and you buy a Marvel comic, they part of what you purchase is you get a digital copy as well. And the way that you get your digital copy is in the back of the comic book, they have a little code, and you take the code and you go to their website and you put the code in, and so you get a digital copy added to your library from the physical copy. So in a way, they've already tokenized the books, they've already tokenized the comics. It's just not technically in the form of an NFT, if that makes sense.
Okay, got it. I'm not that much into comics, to be honest. Isn't it like, aren't these books also numbered and limited, or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, they're numbered. Very few are limited. Um, like there are limited runs, there are highly desirable pieces, and probably given the fact that we're going into the digital age and a lot of people are actually reading digital rather than physical, probably the print run numbers on the newer stuff is actually getting lower and lower and lower. So it's kind of interesting in that the newer stuff is getting rarer than some of the older stuff, but the older stuff that contains like interesting sort of guideposts in the history of comics, like first appearance books, like first appearance of a particular character, or like a wedding event of two characters, or like the death of a character, like all these different sorts of things would be books that are highly desirable. And then, of course, the earliest books are the hardest ones to accumulate because, again, back in the day when the market first developed, these comics were being sold to kids, and they would basically just trash them because they never thought of them as collectibles. They thought of them as stories, as inspiration, as morality plays, right? And so today, more comics are being preserved. So it's easier to find the modern books than it would have been the early books. And the same is going to be true of NFTs. Like I keep harping on this. And the same is true of early cars and early motorcycles, any early collectibles market, right? Like what's going to happen is you're going to have people who came into the market, who bought NFTs, who basically said, "Oh, this is stupid. This is a scam," or "I don't want to spend money here anymore." And then they abandon their wallets, and then they're going to lose their keys, and those wallets are gone forever. So even though the NFT might exist on chain, no one has access to it. We're seeing this with people who want to dig up landfills to find old Bitcoin computers, right? And the truth is, that's going to be the modern version of like trashing a comic book or trashing a baseball card or trashing an early car or bike or motorcycle. Like that's the modern version of that. It's just losing access to it. So if you don't have access to it and no one else can have access to it, then it's gone. You know, it's not sellable, it's not marketable. There's nothing that you can personally do with it. And so ownership in these pieces, the early pieces especially, and again, we are super early in this whole market. That is my thesis on why one of the reasons that early collectibles are going to be highly sought after. The second reason is what they're paired to, right? So we talk about partnerships. If we have a character set that's tied to a storyline, then that's going to make the character set more valuable, obviously. If we have a character set that's tied to a, you know, like I've used the speakeasy business. Like we have a speakeasy around the corner that has the front of a barbershop, like it's a working barbershop. But then at night, you know, they have this hidden door behind this bookshelf. And if you have a pass, you know, you can hold up your pass and the little bookshelf door will open and you go into this bar that's in the back of the building. Right. So like having like memberships tokenized for speakeasies are going to make the tokens more valuable. Right. So again, like it's always going to be a combination of things, not one thing or another thing. And you know, this was the big miss in early projects. It's like, well, the thing is we want to sell our art, right? So how do we sell our art? Well, we hire a bunch of influencers to post all over their timeline, and then we basically you know, mint our shit and then we disappear and we don't do anything, right? Like that was the early idea. Okay, so that's one way to create value for the founders, really, not really the holders. Okay, so but long-term value comes from multiple angles. So what's the next? Well, the next is going to be, okay, IP rights. So I need to own what I actually have. Okay, so that's another angle. So we mint and now we have IP rights. Another angle is going to be, are those IP rights tied to a physical real world asset? Okay, well, that's another thing that brings value. And you can see that the more angles of value or more vectors of value that you have pointing back toward a token, the more valuable and desirable that token is going to be. You know, rarity will be a factor. Who created it will be a factor. The type of artwork will be a factor. All of these things will factor into value. And ultimately, as founders, I feel like really the job is, you know, you want to create something beautiful and useful, but you also want to find these vectors that point value back to the pieces, which ultimately accrues to the holders. You know, we talked about this as well, you know, like I'm finishing a remodel on a rental property this weekend. I've got tenants moving in on Monday. Okay. Well, if we take mint funds and we buy a rental property, okay, and tokenize that rental property, we can tokenize, you know, valuations of rents back to holders in a gamified way, right? And so like there's all these different ways that we can tokenize real world assets and accrue that value back to the community. But we have to do a good job of convincing and selling to people who aren't already in the market so that they A, don't get fucked, and B, end up in the right place so that that can happen for them. Because, you know, like we're talking about earlier, if people abandon their wallets, abandon their artwork, you know, abandon you know, their keys and lose access to it, then in their mind, that's just one more reason it's a scam, even though they were the ones who did the abandoning. So, I mean, again, all of these things, goodwill, especially accrue to the founders and holders of projects who are geared toward long-term vision. And so for me, that's really the only thing that matters for us right now. And that's where I see us going.
Definitely, man. So many cool utilities for NFTs in the future. And yeah, the title says it. We also wanted to drop some news about mint dates. And the next batch mint is set to launch on August 5, which is actually our anniversary. We launched the Bitcoin ordinals in August on August 5th in 2023. And before that, we'll also have another artist incubator mint dropping from Daria. And you created some mint passes for her. I know you just sent the file to me on Telegram. I love the graphic. I love the art. Maybe you want to lose some words on that as well.
Yeah, sure. I actually just posted the graphic to the Spaces timeline so you guys can see it. So this is going to be the new Mint Pass. And basically what I'm going to do is create a series of compressed NFTs and I'll distribute these to the artist, right? So We talked about partnerships earlier. We talked about growth earlier. We talk about, promotions. Like, what are ways we can automate the process that don't involve like scamming and scheming on people? And one of the ways to do that, obviously, is unlocking the followings of the people that we partner with. So, like in Daria's case, um, she has a fairly decent following, a fairly engaged following. And so if we want to engage her collectors and I say, hey, you know what? It's limited to bosses only. Bosses mint everything out and it's gone. Then she has no real incentive to like talk to her following about this piece that she's doing for us. So with the newer pieces and with the mint passes, what we want to do is enable bosses and high-end collectors to mint in the mint, right? And in that way, we can make sure that the artist is honored with a sellout and that our holders are honored with a growing community of collectors, not just random, dickheads who want to come in and flip their shit for a hamburger. So at the end of the day, like this is one of the many ways we're going to end up making attempts to market differently. And then we're just going to keep trying different things until we figure it out. So this will be one of the things that we're going to get into every boss's hand, every holder's hand. We can distribute them to artists who can then distribute them to their collectors, and with instructions that, hey, these go to your highest and best collectors. And in this way, we can start bringing more people, into the artwork IP rights world where they actually own things and expand the community into people who care. I mean, this is one of the ways that STC entered the community, for example, and she's been a fantastic holder and an accumulator of not just Goodfellas, but also bosses and also soul rockers. Like she's been buying this stuff up left and right, and she's acquiring just beautiful pieces. And so this is what we want to continue to, expand upon. And, we don't have all the answers. We're never going to have all the answers, but we have enough resources and enough information to continue to try different things until we figure it out. And I think this is a step in the right direction of figuring this out. And we'll see how it plays out. And then we'll take that feedback and say, hey, it succeeded or it failed. Let's try it again this way, or let's try something different over here. And we're just going to keep chipping away at it until we figure out what works. And so, yeah, so the artwork is posted to the timeline. We're going to get each of these to all of our people, of course. And then, of course, distribute some to the artists who can then distribute to their people and see how that works out and see if it brings us in the right people and continue to go from there. And, as we've said from the beginning, inside our projects, like, the bosses are partners and they have veto power. So if we ever bring anyone into the community that isn't, up to par, the bosses can simply vote that person out of our Discord and out of our community altogether. So we're going to maintain control that way and maintain some semblance of what we want to create. But yeah, that's basically the idea, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely, man. So for everyone out there, keep an eye out for the artwork. I think it's great what you created, and yeah, this should be it for today. Thank you everyone for listening again to the spaces. Keep an eye out for announcement regarding the artist incubator drop, and yeah, should get news out as soon as possible. And as I mentioned, thank you everyone for listening. See you guys next time on Spaces. Bye bye.